Welcome to the Startup Support Surgery podcast, where we light the entrepreneurial spark in medics and healthcare professionals. Join me, Dr. Jo Watkins, GP, business coach and co-founder of The How People, on a journey to discover where your medical know-how meets the business world. This will help you find some clarity on how to balance work, passions and family so that you can gain more freedom and control over your life, but also continue to help people, which is actually why most of us went into medicine to start with. Embarking on this entrepreneurial adventure is not easy. It is a roller coaster of emotions, but it's hugely rewarding and exciting in the process. Drawing on my 20 years of blending medicine and business as a GP, I am here to share experiences, insights and lessons. Expect lively chats, expert interviews and real-life stories from medics who have taken their own path. Let's break free from traditional healthcare norms and explore more innovative ways of making a real difference to people's health and well-being, along with paving the way for a brighter future for us as healthcare professionals. Oh, don't miss my free PDF called From Stethoscope to Startup, which is an 11-page guide in the show notes full of practical help and advice. This is your roadmap to kickstarting your journey with us. Enjoy the show. Today on the podcast, I am joined by the wonderful Dee Blick, who is a multi-award-winning Fellow of the Chartered Institute of Marketing and a #1 best-selling marketing author. Dee has written 4 previous books, including the 15 Essential Marketing Masterclasses for Your Small Business, published by Wiley, rated an excellent read by The Sun, and winner of the Book Bag Non-Fiction Book Award. Her earlier self-published title, The Ultimate Small Business Marketing Book, also became a top 10 Amazon category bestseller for 5 consecutive leads, leading to an international publishing deal in China. Dee has now launched her 5th book. It's called You're the Best, How to Build an Authentic and Magnetic Personal Brand. And it's 13 chapters of practical, theory-free wisdom designed to help you move from being the seeker to becoming sought after in your business. On pre-release alone, this book has hit #1 across 6 Amazon categories, and it is essential reading for anyone wanting to build a credible personal brand on a shoestring budget. Across a 40-year marketing career, Dee has worked with founders, solopreneurs and business owners to help them build authentic personal brands and become recognized as a key person of influence, using the very same process she's applied to her own career with considerable success. And if this conversation resonates, Dee is joining my community this month for a live 90-minute masterclass based on the ideas in You're the Best. And for this session, I am opening it up to podcast listeners, people on my email list and people outside of my community. All the details on how to join, including how to get the book, are in the show notes because I want everybody that attends this masterclass to have a copy of the book. In this episode, we explore what authentic personal branding really looks like, how to stand out without the gimmicks, and how to build a reputation that lasts. And Dee's random fact is a really great one. You have not touched alcohol for 26 years. Is that right, Dee?
This is true. Yes, definitely.
So how old were you 26 years ago when you stopped drinking?
Oh my God, I was 37.
Right.
37 with 2 young boys when I gave up drinking. Not for vanity reasons, I was addicted. And so it was alcohol addiction that drove me to give up, not just, oh, I'm being a bit too skittish at parties, I better just cut out the wine. I was a glugger and a slugger with 2 young boys. And so the option of cutting down wasn't there. It was cutting out or else.
Okay. And did you do that with help?
Yeah, I did. I mean, I went to a 12-step fellowship. I think we all have different routes to recovery. And for me, I've always been a fan of the being in a group and sharing all your foibles and the things that aren't going well in life, as well as that can trip you into active addiction again. So I was just really lucky that I found self-help group. And I think talking therapy, whether it's business, personal, emotional, spiritual, you name it, it's so important. You've got it now with your community, Jo, that we find community that gets us, that understands us at our most brilliant and when we're on the flipping rocks, and they're there to lift us up.
Absolutely. Well, well done. What an amazing story. I'm sure there's actually a book in that as well, because there are, that's the kind of thing that I think a lot of people, when they're in that cycle, hearing from somebody that's actually so much further down the line and actually made an amazing life, that possibly things would have taken a very different turn had you not done that. So massive respect. And I know there'll be people wanting to know a little bit more about that, which we might get into. But we were introduced by Portia Gibson, who I adore and you adore. And she basically sent me one of those messages, which is like, Joe, I've met this woman. You need to get her on your podcast, and she needs to come and do a masterclass to your community. So how did that happen? Like, how do you and Portia know each other? Let's start there, and let's just find out all about you and how you can help our audience here.
I mean, with Portia, it was a case that we both went to a networking group. It was pretty dire, but we both bonded over our irreverence and our sense of humor. And I think that for me is fundamental. If you can't have a laugh wherever you are, then, obviously not at a funeral. And there are certain situations where having a laugh would be deemed to be highly inappropriate. But I'm all about having fun. Portia's just great. She's devilish. She's skittish. She's passionate. And we just bonded over that. And then I founded a marketing mastermind group for people that don't do marketing. And I invited Portia as one of the founder members. And I'm so delighted that she said yes. And then she was like, you've got to know my friend, Dr. Joe. And I'm thinking, I've got to know your friend, Dr. Joe. I definitely have got to know your friend, Dr. Joe.
I love it. And we spoke, we had one of those, like, let's touch base in the car. And I was driving up to North Wales and we spoke on the phone, didn't we? And it was almost like, I felt like I'd known you for years at the end of that. And you very kindly said you'd come and give us a bit of time so you can support some of our listeners who are at various stages in this sort of beginning bit of thinking about doing something differently outside of the NHS. And then I've got people that are further down the line that have got themselves established and have maybe even got to the point where they've got, they've invested lots of money in a website, in a logo, and somebody to help them with this, that, and the other. And they're then sort of sitting there wondering where all the clients are coming from. So this is the spread of people that we have. And I think it's important for me to say at this point that I think within the NHS, particularly in general practice, marketing is not an issue. Like, we do not have to stand outside our doors looking for clients to come and see us. Like, we have, we're like, somebody is literally batting them away with a shitty stick before they even make it in the door. And then they are desperate to get in our rooms. Now, that's not how it works in the big wide world, is it?
No, it's not. And I think the message I'd like to share, because I've been a marketer for 40 odd years and I've hewn my experience and expertise actually working with businesses of all shapes and sizes. And I think that the message of hope is it doesn't matter where you are in your career defining juncture, whether you've invested in that website, whether you're thinking about it, that the most powerful thing you can do is to equip yourself with the know-how, and if I use myself as an experience, that I have no agenda when it comes to sharing my knowledge and expertise now. I share for the thrill of somebody like yourself, or it could be a member of your community going, wow, I can do that now. But you absolutely have to equip yourself with the right understanding and the right knowledge. And I guess that what I would like to do, or what I am doing now, is trying to swerve people away from spending thousands of pounds on what I call shill advice. I'm quite passionate about this, in that somebody's like, oh, if you spend let me show you my coat with all the jewels here. If you spend thousands of pounds with you, I'll put you on the road to success. And my view is that is a load of cobblers. That really what any person should do is equip themselves with the marketing fundamentals. And that's why I think my books have sold all over the world, that I don't do sexy or spicy. I don't do complicated. I really do. These are the hard yards. These are the steps I advise you to take. And guess what the good news is? This costs your time and thinking rather than a wad of cash. Because I've seen so many business owners have fallen by the wayside because they've spent huge amounts of money on what they think is the next best thing. And then they're left sort of like going, well, I put the A board outside, but nobody came. And it's like, well, before we put the A board out, we should have been looking at who the heck are your target customers and looking at where they hang out. My mission now, Joe, is to share I've got this crazy mission of thousands of people worldwide that you can be self-sufficient, you can be successful at marketing if you have the know-how, which is the bedrock, it's the foundation for success. And you don't have to be a marketer to have that. You just need to be curious. You have to have an enlivened mind and be open. So your community are incredibly bright people that have shown through the assiduous process of knowledge, of studying, of practicing, of the doing. They've shown they've got everything that I would ask for as a marketer. They've got all the basic skills there. So what my job is to say, well, that's just brilliant news. You've got it all. So let's now get you to pivot all that brilliance into the direction of marketing and get you into what I call the marketing mindset. And the marketing mindset is not spend shed loads of cash. That's a bit of a long-winded answer. I appreciate it. I get on a hobby horse about stuff like that.
Oh, and this is, I mean, we could have talked for days, didn't we? Because I think we're coming from the same place here. Like the amount of people that come and they say, I've got all this set up, and then I've spent this on Google ads and this on Facebook ads, and then I've gone to this conference and I've done this, I've dived into this group, and then I'm like, oh, tell me a little bit more about your business, and there is no clarity around who they're speaking to. And that is the equivalent of me, like you say, putting an A board out the front of your house and just expecting people to show up. So let's look at that. I think there's lots of things I'd like to pick up on there, but let's look at that first, because I think people like start rolling their eyes at me when I make a point of this. But there is no point, and there wasn't 5 years ago, and there certainly isn't now, in not knowing who you're talking to. And again, that whole reference with general practice, as you can imagine, I sit there when I go into my GP world, and 1 minute an elderly man with prostate cancer comes in, next minute a fitting child comes in, next minute a menopausal woman comes in, next minute a suicidal teenager comes in. I can help everyone with everything, right? So if I took that approach into business, how would that go for me?
I think it would be a disaster, because you would end up spreading yourself so thinly, and you would not know the rubies in the rubble. You would not know the brilliant groups to target, because you've got almost this far too big a picture of who you perceive to be your target audiences. But I think, Jo, that we need to go back a step, and before we even start thinking about target audiences, because every single business that I work with, I take them through this really painstaking practical process. And the first thing is, what am I offering? Because how can we know who we're going to target? So we've got a pretty clear idea about what we are offering and how that's likely to be perceived by the people we want to target. And then we can align with whatever research is going on in the wider world that can bolster our approach to a particular audience. So my first step is, well, let's write down, and I always say, let's not have limits. Let's just plan without limits. Let's look at your offering. You can call them products, you can call them services, I don't care. But let's really take this look about what you would love to offer. And then we thrash it around, we discuss it. It's a really creative process. And then we're like, let's now whittle this down, because there are some of your services that are for further down the line when you build experience, because I talk about this as proof of concept. When you can't go to target group A now because you've not got enough in the can. You're an unknown quantity. They're a little bit suspicious. They want to see proof of concept. But hey ho, further down the line, that group that you're keeping in your little back pocket now, they could be fabulous for targeting further on. And so we need to do that before we can then go into, well, let's just take a big view of who our different target audiences are. Let's be as detailed as possible. Then let's look at the low-hanging fruit, most likely to say, yes, I'm really interested, Dee, in finding out more. And those that are like, really, Dee, look okay, but not sure I trust you now. Because what business owners run out of is hope. They start full of hope, then they lose hope, it dissipates as they begin to do this. Everybody in the world needs my products and services. They ping a few posts out on social media, and then they're saying to me, oh, it doesn't work. Marketing doesn't work. Nobody knows me. and yet they took the wrong approach in the first place. So when I work with a business, it's a fabulously creative process, because if you imagine it, one of your communities wants to be, I don't know, acupuncture, or they want to look at Reiki, or they want to look at some alternative health therapy, or they want to look at coaching. They want to coach confident, accomplished speakers because they've done that in their career. They've attended conferences and so on. Well, it's like, let's just now really capture all of that and write out all these different products and services. And then let's look, I call them your starving crowds. Who's got the biggest hunger and who's quite full? So you've got to wait till their hunger is satiated and they're like looking at you with more expectant eyes. Sorry, I waffle on about this. You're pressing all the right buttons for me as a marketer, because it breaks my heart when I see business owners. And I've probably spoken to thousands over the years through different channels. And when they tell me the money they've wasted on targeting, and it's like, oh my God. I had one guy very briefly came to me. He spent 20 grand on advertising. It hadn't worked. I gave him a marketing plan, worked out all his target audiences. And at the end of it, he said, oh, it's just such common sense. And my answer was, if it's common sense, why did you waste 20 grand? It's, my marketing common sense is like 40 odd years of really distilling it down to the basics, so that talented people like your community, really talented, intelligent, enterprising people can grasp it and go, yeah, I get that. I can do marketing now. I've got that mindset. Whereas before they might have been thinking, what the hell is marketing? It's just too big a subject for me to absorb.
Absolutely. And I think you touched on something there that I think, losing hope. I think once you've lost that and you feel like nothing you're doing is working, you've tried, you've invested time, you've invested money, you're often on the brink of something really important, aren't you? If you have the right support and help around you, I think as business owners, we're always going to have those dips, but it's knowing that you can kind of brush yourself up and get back up again. If you don't have the fundamentals of the learning or the right community and support around you, you're just basically like trying different things and hoping seeing what sticks in your very medical community. Most people I work with don't have entrepreneurs, marketing people around them. Then you just stop, don't you? And I certainly, I think at the beginning, when I first tried to do Botox and I first tried to do acupuncture, I had no clue what I was doing. And 6 months later, I just stopped. So the learnings are fundamental, right? Those basic learnings as to what this is. Do you think everybody can be an entrepreneur? Do you think everybody can do marketing? Or do you think you have to be a certain type of person to do this?
We have this very fixed idea of entrepreneurs like Stephen Bartlett, like Deborah Mead, and like the Dragons. I think being entrepreneurial is about a mindset of being willing to take risk, of being willing to strike out on your own, of being willing to challenge yourself. So I think that if you really want something enough and you're willing to go the hard yards, you absolutely have got an entrepreneurial mindset, because you're striking out on your own. And part of me is, I want to challenge the current prevailing myth of what being an entrepreneur entails. And I think if we look specifically at your community, Jo, you have got such talented people that have shown the rigors of learning, of education. They're resilient, they're robust, they go the extra mile, they're emotionally very connected with their role. They've got everything to actually be successful. I think what they have to do is they have to want it enough. And I talk about this in my new book about what are your whys. If you can connect with your whys, why do I want to strike out on my own? And if your whys are compelling enough and they're grounded in more than just the emotion of, oh, I quite fancy it, then you absolutely can succeed at both marketing and at striking out on your own. Because marketing is as much about learning. You can learn from old bats like me. I've done it for 40 odd years. I've got my fellowship. I'm steeped in marketing. It's all I've ever known. I love it to bits, and I love sharing the winning approach, because I've worked with thousands of businesses all over the world, and many just like your members of your community They're either starting out and they're a bit frightened, or they're halfway down the line and thinking, oh my God, I don't know where to go now. And I can truly say that if they get that marketing know-how, and that doesn't mean searching the internet, because there's so much conflicting advice on the internet that it's almost like try and get some credible sources of information. I mean, I'm going to say it, aren't I? But with my books, because they've won great awards, and I've had thousands of people that have written to me about my books, about how I gave them hope that marketing was not the big scary monster they perceived it to be. So I can say with absolute certainty that your community members, if they want this new business venture enough and they're willing to get a little bit marketing savvy, there is no reason why they cannot then wear that entrepreneurial hat with pride.
Yeah. I'm just taking a quick pause out of the podcast because if you're enjoying this conversation with Dee Blick, then you're going to love what is happening this month. In February 2026, as this podcast goes live, Dee is going to join my community for a live 90-minute masterclass based on her book called You're the Best, which is all about building an authentic, magnetic personal brand. And for this one session in February, and possibly for future session, but I'm going to try it out this month, I'm going to open it up beyond the community. But there's a catch. There's only one thing you need to do, and that is to buy a copy of Dee's book. She is coming into the community for free, and I've promised her that everybody in there is going to have a copy of the book. So that's what's going to happen. So to be able to get an invite to this special masterclass, you need to take a photo of yourself, ideally a selfie, and you need to direct message me on Instagram or LinkedIn, and I will send you the Zoom link. No forms, no signups. This is happening on Thursday, the 12th of February, 2026, 1:30 till 3 o'clock UK time, live on Zoom. So if this conversation is resonating, come and be in the room with us. Medics are not afraid of hard work. They've put shifts in, they've done difficult things, but they've often done those with with almost like the barriers up when you go bowling, with somebody sort of like pushing you back into the middle or saying you've got to jump through this hoop now or that hoop now. And yes, you're ready. Yes, you are. You've done your exam, you've passed this, you've passed that, you're ready to go on to the next stage. And I think that's sometimes where medics really struggle with this sort of progression with entrepreneurship and striking out on your own, because nobody tells you that you're ready, that it's the right time. There's nobody discerning to tell you that you're listening to the right advice at the right time or the right advice at the wrong time. And that's why community matters, learning matters 100%. But I'd like to go back to the why, because that's something obviously Simon Sinek, started us on the why thing. And I talk about it as well in my Banoffee Pie business model. It's the basis that all of this is built on is why you're doing it. And I think it's really interesting with medics that I work with. I look at these sort of push and pull factors, because I think coming into business from a place of burnout, frustration, wanting to change the NHS and feeling on your knees is not a great place to jump into. It feels like going from the frying pan into the fire for me.
Yeah.
Because business is stressful, isn't it? So you need to know, and if you don't know what your why is, you need to give that time to develop it, don't you? I've started businesses because I wanted flexibility and freedom, and then I've ended up with a business that needed £500,000 worth of investment and a factory and 16 people in hairnets, and I was like, what the hell have I done? So it's so important, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, I think I wish I could bottle what you've just said there, because as you were saying it, I was also almost like parroting you in my mind. And I think you make that important point about we need to recalibrate. If we're coming out of a situation where we've been bruised and battered, we need a period of time to recalibrate, to sort of nourish our soul, to make us feel whole again, to make us open to the universe, to make us teachable. And that's what I think is so important with what you're doing, Jo, that you've established a community where people can feel safe to express how they feel. But at the same time, you're giving them touch points where they can actually get started on their journey when they are ready. And I think that period of time it's the same with addiction. I came out of active, addictive drinking. And for the first year, there was no way I could be Dee the smart marketer. So I did lots of fairly baseline jobs. I cleaned houses. I did stuff that got me physically engaged so I could mentally heal, which I know sounds very new agey, but I had to do it after drinking addictively for so many years. I had to give myself time to recover and to adjust to life. I mean, it's a bit like what you're talking about your members that are adjusting to life outside of the NHS. I had to adjust to life outside of the bottle, and it took a bit of time. And once I'd given myself, it took me about a year, and then I was suddenly open to, wow, I can really make hay with this marketing business. And then it was, wow, I can start to write books. So I didn't just become teachable again. I just became open to the idea that I was more than just a woman, a mum with two boys who got into addictive drinking. And I would imagine it's the same with your community, that if you felt burned by the NHS, you've put so much into it, you come out of it. And that period of just really looking after yourself and exploring yourself and being kind to yourself and accepting that the shit that I'm in now, it won't, excuse my French, it won't be like that forever.
Yeah.
But I need this period of time now. So for me, it was getting with my two boys. You know, I was a mum with young sons, that I had all of that to manage before I could then even think about starting up a marketing business again.
Yeah. And I'm actually going to download this podcast and give it straight to the people in my community rather than them waiting for this, because I see this a lot. So I help people very, very early stage. We pick apart all the ideas, we work out what the push and pull factors are, what the why is, the type of people they might want to help. And then, because medics are medics, they think that the next stage is linear and there are hoops to jump through. What actually can happen is that you need to go away and you need to just sit with some of that for a bit. You need to do whatever healing you need to do. You need to look after yourself. You need to move away from toxic environments, etc. You need to pay your bills. You need to work out how that's going to happen while you're starting a business. And only then are you really going to be ready to take this forward. And then curveballs come out of nowhere, knock you for six, you know, relatives get unwell, whatever. And you have to put things on the back burner. So I get people messaging me saying, look, I'm really sorry I haven't been in the WhatsApp group for 3 months, or I'm really sorry I haven't attended a live session. And I say to people, this is not school. I am here as somebody to buffer and support you, because that first year of going from this is an idea, but I definitely want to make it a thing, like, you know, it's only by the end of like a year, if you kind of got a vague idea of what you want to do, you're doing quite well, really, because there's so much learning and stuff to do, isn't there? So it's important not to let that bit get you down, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I think I always encourage, because I've worked with a lot of business owners that have come to me like this. And I say, let's just reframe things. Let's just look upon it as it's time to recalibrate, but also use this period where you're kind of getting over. It could be bullying in the workplace, but you're using it as an opportunity to explore without limits and explore without expectation.
Yeah.
So I always say, when I talk to business owners like this, it might be you want to start reading about marketing. You want to get your head around it, but just read for interest. Don't read with this, oh my God, I've got to be a guru. Use this period of time. In a way, it's almost like if you were studying for a paper, you would gather all the information, all the research, and you'd probably quite enjoy that phase before you then have to start making sense of it. So I think with your community, it's like using, again, all the talents they had when they were studying. It's just imagine yourself, you're back in there, but there's no great exam paper that you have to sit. All you're doing is bringing it all together. Because what I often find with working with entrepreneurs is that you get those eureka moments, and eureka moments come when you haven't planned them. So you might be reading about something and you're in this nice stage of recalibrating, of exploring, and you're thinking, oh my God, that is so interesting. And suddenly, before you know where you are, you've scoped out a product that you're going to be offering a bit further down the line. And I always, it's like I call it, you're in this field of pure potential when you're exploring. Through your healing, I had to heal. But I began to explore about writing a book. Didn't even occur to me one day I might end up writing 6 of the Little Bleeders, but I began to explore what it might take. And that's just, it's almost like giving yourself permission to tap into all the talents that brought you into, in this case, into the NHS, into being truly accomplished.
But you just need to take one step at a time, don't you, along the way? Like nobody's going to come and tell you it's the right thing. You've got to learn this stuff. So we've talked a bit about learning. We've talked about, the healing that is required sometimes before you actually go into this. We've talked about all sorts of stuff. We've mentioned community and the importance of community. What I'd also like to come back to before we go to that is this whole like gurus. You talked about Stephen Bartlett and Deborah Meaden and this sort of dragon's den approach to business, and tough girls or like glossy girls on Instagram telling you that this is the one and only way of doing business and making money, and young guys who haven't got kids telling you how to manage a business, and you're running around with 4 children in the after school run. Like how important is it where you get your information from? And can we just speak a bit about this whole Instagram telling you that life's easy and that you can earn 10 grand a month from a hammock in Bali concept?
Yeah, I mean, it drives me bonkers, and I think it's not relatable and it's not real life. And I think that if we go back again to the people in your community, they're smart people. They don't need to be fed empty vessels and hollow dreams. That I think when we start to try and measure ourselves up against this impossibly glamorous image or against somebody who made millions, it can actually be counterproductive. And I talk about this there's a chapter in my book called Why Being Authentic is the Ace Up Your Sleeve, because it's accepting that you're perfectly okay as you are to be successful on your own terms. You don't have to be a mad extrovert. You don't have to be this really massive titan who's fierce, loud and compromising, who strides around a stage and everybody's terrified of you and they'll pay thousands to breathe the same air as you. I think if you look at the mindset of successful people, they don't fall into these weirdly unrealistic outlines. They don't fall into that. They can be introvert, they could be extrovert, they could be like me with ADHD, they could be completely ordinary people that have got that desire to do something different, to be something different, and to have a good crack at being successful. And for me, authenticity is so important. It starts by recognizing what you are, who you stand for, the best bits about you, the bits that need a little bit of polishing, of preening, of a little bit more of education, or of whether it's basic, like my presentation skills need to be upped, or I need to learn more about X, Y, and Z. If we can start on a realistic platform of respecting ourselves for who we are, rather than trying to measure ourselves against some titan of industry or some glossy Instagrammer that's posing in a bikini with a bottle of wine or some nice jewels, just abandon all of that and really accept you're more than enough as you are, as your true authentic self. And I know authentic gets bandied around a lot, and I mean knowing who you are, not trying to be who you're not. So if you're an introvert, not trying to make yourself extrovert, but you accept you're good enough as you are. But if you want to become, so I talk about magnetic in my book, if you want to become magnetic, and I say that is when your journey is going from being the seeker to the sought after. That's the whole point of the journey of my latest book. Then accept that you're going to have to change a bit. Not change your character, but you're going to have to embrace the new, the unfamiliar, things that you haven't done before. But trust that your training as a medical person, that your character, that your willingness to do this, to get you onto that road less traveled, it's more than enough. And I would say, sod all this Instagram and entrepreneurs and all the rest of it, because they set an unrealistic benchmark that comparing ourselves to them, all that happens is we end up feeling disenchanted and disillusioned. Quite robust on that one, Joe, because I see it happen so much around me. I want to be like her. And I'm like, why? Be like you. And that's about connecting with your whys. It's about that learning all the steps so I'm not a seeker anymore. Suddenly I'm sought after, and it's most definitely a journey. And I think we have to be more willing to make the journey than we should to change our flipping characters.
Yeah, we absolutely have to. And I think if you're running a business in a way that you're looking at somebody else and you try and follow them, or you try and do exactly what they're doing, first of all, like I say, authentic's banded around, but it's so true that you're not going to come across as authentic. It's not going to be you, but also it's really hard work to show up as something you're not. It's not going to last very long. So,
Yeah.
don't try, and there is a place for everybody. Like you've said, this sort of exploring without limits, this experimental approach, I call it, to
Yes.
getting
Yeah.
out there and seeing what this is about. It's just so important. So be careful who you learn from as well. I think learning, the basics and the fundamentals. And, doctors are brilliant at investing in more letters after their names or diplomas in various things. But actually those things, don't bring people to come and see you who are happy to pay for your services. You have to invest in the learning. Like obviously, in my community, in your community, your books, there's plenty of YouTube channels, but learn from the right person. Somebody maybe that's been there and done what you're wanting to do, or somebody that has the same thing going on at home, or somebody that you can relate to, as opposed to these really unrelatable people that are out there telling you how easy this is, because I can tell you it's not easy. And I'm constantly on a day-to-day basis supporting people in my WhatsApp group who are like, I've tried to have 4 discovery calls, 3 of them have cancelled, I've only had 1, maybe this isn't working. And I'm like, nope, that's just a step you've got to take. That's just something that's going to happen. How can we change the process? What can we do to improve? And you've just got to pick yourself up, because nobody else does that for you. And it's not easy, is it? I'm sure in your
No.
lifetime, there's been many times where you've thought, my God, I better go and get a job. It's much easier.
Oh, absolutely. And I think you're right about real life. I was writing this last book and I can remember being up against the deadline, but still on a Wednesday, my mum-in-law, I take her out with the little dog. She's got dementia and she went roaming in the shopping centre and left me for ages. And the irony wasn't lost on me. I'm there, I've got a publishing deadline and I'm looking for my mum-in-law who's wandering around a shopping centre. And in the end, she'd walk back home and forgot she'd come in with me. But you're right. I think it's all about, I admire people that are relatable, that I think, yeah, I can embrace that because they're not making it too big a hill to climb. The minute I think if I look at authors or if I look at marketers, the minute a marketer starts to make themselves remote and inaccessible because they're talking jargon is when people are frightened off. And I've always made it my mission as a marketer. I've done all the jargon, I've got the qualifications, but you won't hear me spouting it because I want people to pick up that little toolkit I'm offering them and think, yeah, I can do that. I understand what she's talking about. She's not, covering everything in this huge load of theory to make marketing appear like a black art when it's not.
Yeah.
Marketing is super effective communication and knowing who you want to communicate with, why, where you find them, and what you're going to offer to them over what period of time. And what I help businesses to do is join all the dots up, then give them those bits of expertise, which now is through my books, because I'm not taking clients on. But yeah, really people should just acknowledge I am more than flipping good enough. Because if anything in the NHS, if your backstory and your war story has not taught you something, it's that you are so much more resilient and capable than you give yourselves credit for. And then that leads to the fact there's probably so much unexplored potential within you. All those skills are just waiting. They're juicy and they're waiting to be put to even better use. And so with like the support you give in your community, it's like you're just lighting that little touch flame, aren't you? You're just lighting it and giving them that hope.
This has been such a valuable conversation. I really appreciate your time, Dee. It's been amazing to kind of like riff these ideas around with you and actually hear, your wealth of experience, these books that people can go to, they can learn from you. I always say to my community that part of my role is to put trusted, real people in front of them to learn the skills that they want to learn. And, for me, you've got that in spades. And I'm really looking forward to being able to share this with my close community in my group, but also with the wider audience in the podcast. So how do people get in touch with you? You've mentioned you're not taking on any more one-to-one clients, you've written all the books. Like, is that the best way? Is there anywhere?
Yeah, I'm not taking clients on. But when a reader buys my book, they become in my little circle, which means that if they message me on LinkedIn and say, Dee, I've got it, it's the latest one, that you're the best. If they write and say, I've got your book, Dee, and I love it, and if they ask me a question, they will always find me happy to answer. I've never in all my life, to my knowledge, not responded to a reader. So I always say, when you buy my book, you get a bit of a passport to me that you can just, and I do things like, and we can talk about this, doing little master classes. I'm doing one for a group. There's 40 of them and they've all bought my book, and I'm doing a whole 2-hour masterclass on marketing where I'm walking them through the book, taking questions. So that's the space I'm in. If they buy the book, they get access to me, and who knows what you and I might do in the future. We could end up doing a really cracking little marketing masterclass. We'll see what happens.
Love it. Thank you so much for your time. I massively appreciate it. And I will put all of this in the show notes. It's been amazing. I've loved getting to know you even better. And I can't wait to meet you properly one day.
Well, I think we're like kindred spirits. The things you're saying, I kept thinking, oh my God, I was going to say that. It's just
brilliant. Well, thank you, Portia, for putting us in touch. And I'll speak to you soon. I hope this episode has sparked some new ideas or challenged your thinking. Transitioning from medicine to business is not easy. It's about adapting our skills while embracing the unknowns of entrepreneurship. It can be nerve-wracking, but remember, you are not alone on this journey. Please feel free to reach out to me via direct message on LinkedIn or Instagram, or just shoot me an email at joe@bendylegs.com for support. And don't forget to grab the free PDF from the show notes, From Stethoscope to Startup, which is your go-to guide and resource for diving into entrepreneurship. Many thanks for tuning in. I will see you next time. Thanks for spending your precious time with me.
This has been a Monkey Pants Productions podcast.